Hello, my beautiful motorheads. Welcome to Féroce, where we inspire you to live fiercely. I'm your host, Annick Magac. So maybe you rode as a kid and then you stopped riding, or you used to ride and then you got married or you had kids, or there was like a big life change that happened so that you stopped riding. Well, I've been really impressed to see and very inspired by a lot of viewers who have written in the comments that they got back into motorcycling later in life. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about that and how we could make that transition easier and how to embrace that change. There's going to be points in our lives where maybe we're going to get more miles than we do other years. And how do we deal with that? So let's dive in. Let's face it, there's just going to be some years where you ride a lot. It's going to be perfect. The weather is going to be good. The circumstances of your life, your money, your work, like all of it's going to come together and you're just going to have some amazing years. Then there's going to be other years that are just not that good. It happens. There's going to be a year where maybe there's a lot of rain and it's totally out of your hands, right? You can't do anything about it, but you just don't end up riding that much that year. Or it ends up that you had to work too much, or you got an injury of some sort and weren't able to ride. We don't talk about these gaps in riding as much as we should, because what can happen is that when we take some time off or there's outside circumstances that we haven't foreseen, it can be hard to get back into riding. So what does it take to get back into riding? How can we make that transition easier and make our seasons better in being able to do more mileage? I know that this affects a lot of us because it is apparent in the comments where the discussions are really happening. So I enjoy all your comments. Please leave suggestions, feedback, things you want to discuss. I'm totally open to it, and I always try to respond to everybody. It's just inevitable. Some years are going to be better than others. It's life. It happens. So how do we keep in the spirit of riding and continue through those hard times or the times where we just weren't able to do it? Different scenarios can come up. Maybe you had to sell your motorcycle because you wanted to put that money towards a financial goal, like a house, or you had to buy a car, or you had a baby, or you had to move and your circumstances changed and you couldn't have a motorcycle where you are. There are so many different reasons why we might have to put motorcycling on the shelf for a little while. I want this discussion to encourage you, if you are in that phase of life right now, to encourage you to, hold on and think that, yes, I can get back into it. And sometimes it's hard because once you let something go for a little while, it's harder to get back into it. A good example would be that I played hockey in high school. And I went to a college that then didn't have a hockey team, and I completely got out of it. Fast forward years later, I had found that I was actually living near a hockey rink. I would drive by that hockey rink, and every time I drove by, I was like, man, I would love to play hockey again. It would just be so much fun to get back into it. I would say 5 or 6 years this went on. It was not like, oh, I had this thought and everything transpired. No, it was a while that this actually happened. And during that time, I was traveling a lot for work. And when I changed my job, I finally had the time and the space to stay in the area and commit to doing the hockey. So what did I do? I went out and I tried to get information about what hockey teams were playing. I decided, well, it would be really fun to have a friend play hockey with me. So I went and I told my friend Meg, who played in college, I said, Meg, do you want to play hockey with me? And she's like, well, I'd be interested in it, but I don't have any gear anymore. And I was like, don't worry, I'm going to figure it out. So I found the team. It ends up that rink did have a women's league at the time. And then eventually I ended up playing with men's leagues, but they actually had an adult women's league. They had a great program. There was this kids closet where parents could donate old hockey gear from their kids. And then a new generation of young kids could use that gear, and it kind of rolled over. Well, the advantage to being a small female is that you can actually fit in a lot of the kids hockey gear. Go figure. So I literally went and I got gear for myself, and I put together a bag for Meg, and I went to her house and I was like, Meg, we are playing hockey. And I gave her the bag and she's like, cannot believe you did this. And I give Meg credit because she was totally game for it. And she ended up joining the team with me, and it ended up being so much fun. I really got into doing the league, and through that, I met a larger community because I segued from, playing with the women to playing with men. And it was great. It was super social, great community, very parallel to the motorcycle community. Like once people are really into this sport, they tell you about other places and other teams that are looking for players and other pickup games. And you can basically do it as much as you want or not at all. We had a bunch of years that were just fantastic doing that. And we also upgraded, the more we got into it, we did upgrade all our gear and got a very appropriately sized women's gear that smelled much better and was in much better shape. But my point was this, it was a 20-year gap between when I played as a kid and then when I decided to play as an adult. I was worried about that. I was worried about getting back on the ice. I was worried, would I know how to do this? Am I even fit? Well, let me be honest. The first few sessions were so hard, I thought that I was going to throw up. Basically, ice skating is just like sprinting as fast as you can until you cannot go anymore. And if you are not in shape for that type of exercise, it's brutal, but it's also amazing and one of the best high intensity interval training that you can possibly do. So there you have it. My point with that is that, things are going to happen and you can have this joy or this interest and then pursue it later in life. So I love seeing the comments and I love when people are writing that they have found motorcycling later in life again and that they're all in, and that at any point in age, motorcycling can be a wonderful sport and interest. And I know that if you're watching this, I'm talking to a lot of like-minded people who currently ride, but I know that there are people who are watching these videos and being inspired to live fiercely. That's the whole point of the podcast is Féroce, which means fierce, and to live fiercely in whatever that means, in whatever capacity. So how can you set yourself up for riding later in life and getting back into it if you've taken a break? Well, number one, take a class. Even if you had ridden for 20, your whole childhood, 20 years, and you took a break, and then you're getting back into it, and you feel like you still have all these years of experience, I still recommend just taking a refresher course because some things have changed. Some ways that they teach motorcycling or some riding skills have just, they've changed a little bit. And mostly it's adapting to newer technology on the motorcycles, which might be a little bit shocking. Like the brakes are so much better. You don't have to, prep your bike in certain ways the way that you had to in the past, like using a choke to warm up your bike. Modern bikes, you don't really have to worry about that. What's the difference between riding a bike that maybe used to have drum brakes and now has incredible disc brakes that you could stop into a stoppie by how great some of these newer technologies were that maybe did not exist when you were riding before. The second thing to make it as easy as a transition as possible is to find a bike that you really love, get excited looking at it, and also feel very comfortable riding it. And that might mean that maybe it's a smaller bike than you had anticipated, meaning CC-wise, or it's a different riding style. Maybe now there's different bikes that exist that didn't exist before. The adventure bikes are much more popular than they were in the past. Maybe you are feeling the nostalgia and you want to be on a cafe racer. So you look at Triumphs and you kind of look at the modern cafe racer types. Or you decide that you still want to be able to ride a sport bike and do that. Well, there are plenty of sport bike options that can fit your body and be a great experience. One incredible thing that has happened with motorcycles is that in the evolution that has happened over the past 5-10 years is that motorcycles have become actually a lot easier to ride. And if you're worried about the ease of it or even being able to shift, there's so many auto clutch options right now and just a lot of technology that helps the rider be better. I get to test ride motorcycles, and one bike that I test rode was the Honda CBR 650R. So it's a fully faired sport bike. Awesome motorcycle. Well, I was riding it and I completely went into a corner too hot. And as I was approaching it, it was one of those things where you're like, ooh, I don't know about this. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it. And the traction control kicked in and I flew through that turn smelling like roses. I was so shocked. I mean, I know I have the skills and the capability to do that, but I have to say that the modern conveniences that bike has with the traction control also made me that much better. And I have to say, My riding day was beautiful because not only did I feel like really good about myself about performing this excellent recovery on the motorcycle, but two, I didn't crash, right? So I didn't ruin my day, nor did I hurt myself or anything like that. So, you know, believe in the new technology. It's there for you to work with and to embrace it and to enjoy it, right? The other thing is if you do get into an accident or you do something that you're embarrassed about, like you drop your bike in the parking lot in front of everybody, you forgot to put your kickstand up, you fall over, and, as an adult rider, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I just did that in front of people. It's so embarrassing. Well, there's the one thing that's really great about getting older, and it is I don't give a about anything anymore, right? So it happens. You know what? We've all fallen over. I just did it last season, and yeah, there was no one around. I still got red in the face, and I don't. It was such a stupid, just stupid maneuver that I did. And, sometimes you just get a little top heavy on uneven terrain and things happen. You know what? Like in life, pick it up, get back on the horse, and let's go. We don't need to dwell or beat ourselves up about stupid things that have happened. It's just not a big deal. If you do happen to get into an accident, assess the situation, like if it's an accident where you have really had to take time off to heal, I very much understand second guessing, or I wouldn't say second guessing. I think a better way to put it is to say that contemplating whether or not you should continue riding. As you get older, bones and things, they take longer to heal. If you put in the time and effort in recovery, you can make that happen a lot quicker. There's a lot of vitamins, support, therapy, all these different things that we now have, tools and access to knowledge-wise on the internet that can kind of help with faster healing. So I don't want anybody to be discouraged with the thought of like, oh man, if I get hurt, like this could be a really bad thing. It could, of course. Like we need to always know that, yes, you can die on a motorcycle. It can happen. But if we only think about that, then we put ourselves into a disadvantage. So I always like to say, there's no reason to worry about that. I'm just going to leave it at that. What we want to do is just mitigate any of these issues. And if you do get into an accident, the best thing that you can do if you decide that you want to continue riding, and I really hope that you want to, is to try to get onto a motorcycle as soon as possible. And if that just means that you ride a scooter around the yard or your kid's XR100 or, anything, just get back on the horse as quickly as possible. There's a reason why there's a saying for that. It really helps you mentally get over the fears, because the longer you have to think about it, the worse scenario you're going to put yourself in. And then it might be another 5 or 10 years where, again, you're at a point where thinking about oh, should I get back into motorcycling or not? These are just a few hot tips on getting back into motorcycling. I strongly encourage it. This applies also to if you've just gone out and just had maybe a few weeks where you just didn't ride well. There have been a couple of years where I didn't ride well at all. I felt really off. And it had more to do, and it always typically has more to do with what's going on personally in your life. If you're distracted by stress in relationships, in finances, in work, those are usually the biggest ones, then it is going to impact your riding. As much as riding is therapy, it is 100%, and I think everybody would agree that it is a form of therapy. Sometimes if you're just really off, because you're thinking so much about these things that are weighing heavily on you, it's okay to just accept that ride might not be that good. Or maybe you should just not be on the bike if you are very distracted and very upset. Those are the scenarios that I just don't ride. It's okay to take that break. I highly recommend actually not being on the bike in those scenarios. If you know for yourself that being on the bike makes you feel better and has always been a point of just positive therapy, then yes, get on the bike and ride. Just ride. And let's just make this year the year that you get back in the saddle, or the year that we decide to make it a really good season and put on as many miles as possible. Just keep it simple. Let's ride more this year. I would love for you guys to share your experiences. Anyone who has decided to get back into riding, it would be wonderful if you could share in the comments maybe what some of the challenges have been for you, and if you agree or disagree with anything that I have said. And if you have anything to weigh in and add, I'm all ears. I would love to hear it. If you like what you have seen today or heard, please like and subscribe. And as always, ride smart. Ciao.